Hi, I'm Caitlin, and this is Book Chats, and today I'm doing a book survey for the books that I read in 2015. This was created by Jamie from Perpetual Page Turner, and I first saw it on the channels of Kayla from Kayla Rain and Trina from Between Chapters, and I thought that it would be fun to do it as well. I might end up splitting this into 3 parts, I'm not sure. I tend to talk a lot, and it's kind of a long survey, but I think it's really interesting and an interesting way to look at books and maybe talk about books that I haven't talked about already on my channel, because I have already talked about my kind of favorite books of 2015 in 2 different ways. So it starts off with just kind of gross numbers. How many books did you read in 2015? I read 134. This included at least 3 novellas. Number of rereads. I don't actually keep track of my rereads. Maybe I need to do that in 2016, but I don't reread a lot. It's probably 0. What was the genre I read the most from? Again, I don't really keep track of this. I should maybe do that for 2016. Like YA would be like the big category I read the most from, but within that, of course, there's a lot of subgenres. So now for kind of the first bookish section, that's just like the best of. So the best book I read in 2015, Missoula by Jon Krakauer. I've talked about this in 2 other places. I will link to both of those videos. Books I was excited about and thought I was going to love, but didn't. Jesus Feminist by Sarah Bessey. Also Unmade by Sarah Brennan. Both of them were hugely disappointing to me, and I had way too high of expectations going in. What was the most surprising, in either a good way or a bad way, book that you read? In a good way, it was Bone Gap by Laura Ruby. I had heard of that this book was good, and I knew that it was nominated for an award, and I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. I didn't expect it to be as deep as it was. I just didn't expect of it what it ended up being. And I've talked about that a couple other times, and it will come up again in this list. In the worst way, most surprising, Magonia, because I never knew what was going on. If your book is surprising because you literally can't explain to me what's actually going on, it's not a good way. It's not. Book that I pushed the most people to read, and they did. It's probably either Bone Gap, which I read at the end of the year, but I pushed a bunch of people to read, and several of them actually have read it and enjoyed it, and several of them are going to read it in 2016. Or Ask for It, which has a subtitle. Anyway, it's a book about negotiating, and specifically negotiating skills for women, but negotiating skills in general, and it was really good. I read it back in March, and I've told a couple friends to read it, and they have really felt like it was helpful, just like I did. This is question 5, and it is a kind of a 3-parter. The best series that I started in 2015, the best kind of continuation of a series, and the best ending of a series. Started the Others, I think it's called, series, which is the first book is written and read by Anne Bishop, and it's highly addictive, and I just read the next 2 in a row, and I just found out that there's not, I thought the end of the series was this year, and it's not, and I'm kind of frustrated about that. Best sequel of 2015, I really love The Dream Thieves by Maggie STIEFVATER. I also like Blue Lily Blue, but I think I like The Dream Thieves more. I also love The Winter's Crime, which was the sequel to The Winter's Curse, which I also read in 2015. So many good series that I started this year. Best series ender of 2015. I read a duet this year. It's the second book is called Death Marked, and the first book is called Death Sworn, I believe. Maybe the order is reversed. Anyway, it's a really lovely duet by Leah Cypus, and especially the second book. I just love the way it ended. I love some of the things that she did. She was very daring, did stuff that you don't normally see in YA fantasy. I really loved it. I feel like Leah Cypus really is a callback to old school adult fantasy that I loved. Question number 6, my favorite new author I discovered in 2015, Emma Mills, who wrote First and Then. I basically read First and Then, and it will come up later on this list, but her characters and story was so wonderfully, believably, in a way that just made me she's an automatic read now for me. I will read anything she writes so far based on that book alone. Best book for my genre I don't typically read, or that was out of my comfort zone. The Three Body Problem was way out of my comfort zone. It's a science fiction novel that was translated from Chinese this year. It won the Hugo Award. It was highly technical and also really not culturally what I'm used to reading. I really struggled with the book, and I didn't necessarily like it, but I think the reasons I didn't like it had more to do with how I was disconnected from it because it was so far out of my comfort zone than a commentary on the book itself. Question number 8, what is the most action-packed or thrilling and unputdownable book of the year? Angel Fall. I was on a trip with my family and I was reading it, and once you get in, I think past the first chapter, it basically sucks you in and you can't stop reading, and I was reading in the car, I was reading in the hotel room, I was reading while I was waiting in line to get tickets for the Liberty Bell, I just was reading it everywhere. Number 9 is a book I read in 2015 that I'm most likely to reread in 2016 this year, Bone Gap. Favorite cover of a book I read in 2015. I actually have this one. I looked at all the covers on Goodreads and I was like, you know, I think the cover I like the most of all of these is Truest by Jackie Lee Summers. Part of that is because I know Jackie and it's just so wonderful to see the name of someone I know and love like on a book, a real published book. And then I just like, I love just how beautiful it is and I can't really explain, like, you know, book covers, you just like them or you don't. Most memorable character of 2015. I excluded characters from books that I had read. So there's a couple series that I had started in 2014, and then I continued reading in 2015, and I excluded those characters. So, like, basically anyone from the Reagan Boys is excluded. So that being said, my most memorable character of 2015 was Kestrel from The Winner's Crime / The Winner's Curse. Most beautifully written book read in 2015 is a tie between The Sacred Lives of Minnow Bly by Stephanie Oakes and Lovely, Dark, and Deep by Amy McNamara. Both of these books are YA novels. I haven't, I think, both be YA debuts, but YA novels written by poets. Literally reading those books last year and seeing how beautiful the language was made a new resolution for me that I want to read all the YA books written by poets that I can get my hands on in 2016. Question number 13 is the most thought-provoking or life-changing book of 2015. Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. I've also talked about this book at length in 2 other places. I'll link both of those videos here. So many applications to my life and the lives of the people I love that are close to me. Book I can't believe I waited until 2015 to finally read, the Angelfell trilogy. I waited because I was waiting for the 3rd book to come out. The shortest and longest books I read in 2015. So my best guess for shortest, because Goodreads counted one of my audiobooks as shortest because it was like 8 pages, which just means that it was like 4 CDs long, which doesn't count. So I think the shortest book that I read was We Should All Be Feminists, which is like 48 pages long, and the pages are like that big. So yeah. And then the longest book that I read is Wolf Hall, which I listened to an audio, and it was like 20 plus hours long. The book that shocked me the most, that's question number 17, Missoula by Jon Krakauer. It was both incredibly shocking and really sadly believable all at once. I've talked about this book. You know what this book is about if you've watched my channel. Missoula is a book about rape and rape culture in the United States, and specifically in a college town, and it is both shocking, disturbing, and incredibly important. Question number 18, for something a little more cheerful, my OTP of the year, I will go down with this ship. Kestrel and Arin. My favorite non-romantic relationship of the year, the Cahill sisters in Born Wicked, the first of the Cahill Witch Chronicles. Their sisterhood is so wonderfully authentic. Number 20, my favorite book I read in 2015 from an author I've read previously, Missoula by Jon Krakauer. Again, this is my favorite book of the year. This is a book that I think is so important, and Jon Krakauer, this is the book for him. I had previously read Into Thin Air, and I had tried to read Into the Wild, but couldn't get through it. I read this book and I was like, wow, Jon Krakauer, not only is this book incredibly important and like incredibly moving, but you as an author put it together in such a perfect way. Like, I really gained so much respect for Jon Krakauer just in that one book. Question number 21, the best book I read in 2015 that I read based solely on a recommendation from somebody else or peer pressure, Bone Gap by Laura Ruby. My friend told me to read it a year ago before it was even out. I was supposed to read it back in March when it came out. I didn't, and then it got longlisted and then shortlisted for the National Book Award. And so I was like, okay, and I finally picked it up, and it was so good, guys. 22 is the newest fictional crush from a book I read in 2015. I am too old for this because of these 2 characters, but they swooped in right at the end of the year, and I just love them to pieces. Ezra from First and Then, and Finn from Born Wicked. Question number 23, what was the best 2015 debut that I read? In 2015, it was Sacred Lives of Minnow Bly. I'm going to have a whole video ranking all of the 2015 debuts that I read when I finish reading them for the challenge, because the challenge I read them for goes to the end of January. 24, the best world building or most vivid setting I read this year, Angelfell. It is set technically in like the San Francisco Bay Area, but it's in like a post-apocalyptic way, and there is a ton of world building like on top of it with like the angels and things, and it's just so well done and so fabulous, basically, and it's very detailed. Hi, coming to you from lower down on the floor because my foot fell asleep. Question number 25, what book put a smile on my face or was just the most fun to read? First and Then by Emma Mills. I read this right at the end of the year, and I can't stop smiling about it. It is exactly what people said it was, which is a cross between Friday Night Lights and Pride and Prejudice, which is so unusual because when I heard that, I was like, it's not really going to be that. But it was. It was wonderful. I can't stop smiling when I think about it. Question number 26, a book that made me cry or nearly cry in 2015. Really, there's too many of these to count, guys. I cry very easily at books. I cry very easily at movies and television shows. But one that I know that I cried at was Lizzie Bright and the Buckminster Boy by Gary D. Schmidt. 27, a hidden gem of the year. I finally read Lovely, Dark, and Deep by Amy McNamara, which is a book that my little sister literally, she told me to read it, and then she told me to read it again, and I checked it out in the library, and then she, literally had to visit me over Thanksgiving, and was like, I started reading it right before she came to visit, because I was like, oh, she's going to ask me again if I've read it, and then we literally, sat on the couch and had family reading time, and I read it, but it was so beautiful, and it's just so overlooked, and it's a book that deals kind of with the aftermath of a very traumatic experience. I don't think it's a spoiler to tell you that the main character was in a pretty bad car accident, and she was with someone and that person did not survive, and she's kind of dealing with the after effects of all of that. And that book wasn't published in 2015, but I did finally read it in 2015. Question number 28 is a book that crushed my soul, Missoula by Jon Krakauer. No explanation needed. 29, the most unique book I read in 2015, The Three-Body Problem. This was really unique because it was a Chinese book that was originally written in Mandarin and for a Chinese audience. Was very popular there and then was translated into English. I read it with a friend of mine who was reading it in the original Mandarin because she is an overachiever, and it was totally foreign to me in that it was highly technical, theoretical physics, and also this flavor. I read the translator's note at the end, and he was talking about how he was trying not to change radically the flavor of the book for an American audience. He wanted them to get kind of the flavor that Chinese audiences were used to and loved, and it just again, it wasn't very accessible to me, and I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it to everyone. I didn't particularly like the book, but I think it was because it was so foreign to me and because it was so unique and different from what I'm used to. And the final question of this section is question 30, which is the book that made me the most mad. So, excluding Missoula, the book that made me the most mad was A Wicked Thing. Rhiannon Thomas is the author. It was a debut I read this year, and I just felt like it had so much potential, and it was all completely lost. It was infuriatingly written. I'm not going to go on the length of it here because I'm going to talk about it when I do my my review of every debut that I read for the Debut Author Challenge of 2015, but it was so frustrating. Thank you so much for watching this survey of my favorite kind of books in different categories that I read in 2015. I have another video that is the rest of the questions for this survey, and you can find that on my channel as well. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.